So we're starting the third shiur on דיני שותפים, continuing the halachas of shutfus. After we discussed how a shutfus is established, we're going to move into percentages of shutfus, which is Sa'ifim Hey Vav Zayin. Try to get through Sa'ifim Hey and at least part of Vav today with the amount of time that's left. Shulchan Aruch, and this is also, again, this is important because there's a whole discussion whether shutfus is based on percentages of money invested, based on the work invested, if they've made a decision beforehand or not, and that's pretty much what Sif Hey goes into. The difference in what kind of things are purchased at the moment of the shutfus. Sif Hey, the Shulchan Aruch, the Mechaber starts, it says that if two people become shutfim, each one puts into the pot a different amount of money, not equal amounts. Then the Mechaber says, "V'nisasku kulam b'momoin stam," and everybody together worked stam with the money. They didn't specify anything. So then, both the profits and the losses are all split equally, and not in accordance with how much money they originally invested into it. What is this talking about? So the Smer right away points out that we're talking about for example, a live animal that was bought b'shutfus, and it was sold as a live animal. Even if originally the intention was to buy it for the purpose of shechting, in which case you could split the meat. But here it's alive. When it's alive, you can't split. Ein boi kedei chalukah, which you already know from the previous topics that we learned. And being that there is no way to split a live animal, so then you split the revach equally. But if they shechted it, being that you could split the meat into different parts, so the money gets split according to the percentages of investment. And we look, the Sema says, we look at the end result, we don't look at the beginning. So therefore, even though originally it was purchased for the purpose of shechita, and therefore, originally, if it would have been shechted, one person would have gotten 70% of the meat, one person would have gotten 30% of the meat. Being that they changed their mind now, they decided to sell as a live animal. Therefore, we look at the end result right now, and that's how we split the revachim, and it goes based on it goes 50-50 because the animal cannot be split. Now, obviously, and you're going to note from the end of the Sif, when we say we're in the Saska with Mom and Stam, what's La Puk if they made it Tanai? If they made it Tanai, then everything is according to the Tanai, just like it says in the end of the Sif. Tanaim, the Shutfim make Tanaim, everything is according to the conditions that they made Milchatchila. The Smek continues that not only does it apply to an animal, a shoir, but it applies to any form of merchandise that cannot be split. It's made for the purpose of sale. Everything is mixed together. It's meant to be sold as one, and that according to the Mechaber, that's based on the Rif and the Rambam, there you split it when you sell it as one. You split it 50-50. That is the svara and why is that? Because according to the Smeh, the aside of a shutfus, the aside of splitting profits is if something can be split into pieces, then the profit gets split based on percentages. If something cannot be split into pieces, then we go based on the original, then we go 50-50. What?
Why can't we split into pieces?
What?
Why can't we say whoever gets 25% gets 75% of the profit?
He says because they became shutfim in this thing, and being that you can't split the actual object in which they are shutfim, so therefore it becomes 50-50 and we don't look at it. That's the svara of the Smeh, how understands the Shulchan Aruch. That's the reason why he says that's the svara that he gives for the Shulchan Aruch. Now, yes, he has questions on that svara. Comes the Erech Shai. The Erech Shai brings a different reason from the Yerushalmi. He says the reason for it is not because of whether you could split it or not, but rather very simple, because you can't, because this shutfus. Why did the guy with 75% take a partner of 25%? because he knew that this shutfus cannot happen without the other one. You wouldn't be able to buy. You have to buy a house for $1 million, or you have to buy something for a certain price. And without the little guy, you wouldn't be able to get it. You don't have enough money for it. So therefore, you needed the little guy. Since you needed the little guy, so the standard understanding is that you split 50-50. The Sma actually brings a similar svara, not his own svara, but he brings a similar svara that could be that the big one recognized the charifus, the sharpness of the little guy, and he realized that by the Sma brings it as in the name of somebody else. And he said, and that's why the understanding was they're going to split it 50-50. Now, the Sma also brings that there's a reason of the levush. What's the reason of the levush? Is the levush says basically as long as you don't make a t'nai, we say 50-50 regardless of how much is put in. That means the generic understanding, and the Sma then goes and asks a bunch of questions in the levush and says, the Sma brings the name of the levush, the reason of the levush, that it's all totally in t'nai. Being shaloi hisnu, they didn't make a t'nai from the beginning, how they're going to split the profits, it's obviously understood it's going to be 50-50. That's the svara, and the Sma asks on it a bunch of questions. I'm not going to get into it now. The Mishpat Shalom brings, it says, what the Sma asks in the levush, I don't understand why the Sma is attacking the levush. The reason the levush is brought in the tshuva of the Rif, that basically whenever you don't make a t'nai, it's as if you made a specific t'nai to split 50-50, and therefore that is the main reason. The other thing the Mishpat Shalom brings, another interesting point that the Mishpat Shalom here brings in the name of the Rif, and the Chuvas Arif, is that this whole discussion of when you bought it for shechting, that's mashma, that if you bought it from shechting, it's split according to the percentages, is not talking about when they bought it for shechting for the purpose of selling, when they bought it for shechting for the purpose of eating. So therefore, obvious, when a person buys a cow for the purpose of eating, so one person puts in a certain amount, the other person puts in a certain amount, is because they have a plan that this person is going to get this amount, the person is going to get that amount. But if the purpose is that they're going to buy it for the purpose and shecht it for the purpose of selling the meat, then this whole merchandise becomes shutfus merchandise, and again we fall back on, if there was no specific t'nai, the generic understanding, the default shutfus is 50-50 and not based on investments. And he brings a bunch of other people who agree with that understanding, and that's the Machne Ephraim and others. The Aruch HaShulchan and Sif Yudala takes it the other way, and he says that there's no machlekes b'chlal if they bought it for the purpose of eating, because then it's obvious that it gets split according to whatever each one invested. When they bought it for sale, that's where there is a machlekes. Not like the Mishpat Shalom understood that when they bought it for sale, there's no machlekes, but the Aruch HaShulchan says when they bought it for sale, there is a machlekes. That is the machlekes of the Rishonim that the Tur brings, that the Mechaber over here brings. That, according to the Rosh, in such a thing you sell it 50-50. And according to the others, you don't. You go based on the amount of money that was invented. Erech Lechem also says the same thing. We'll get into it later. B'chlal, the Erech Lechem has a very interesting, he throws it in a very interesting klal. He says, look at how, we don't look at the actual merchandise, what it was, we look at how it's going to be sold. If it's something which is sold as one, then it gets split 50-50. If it gets sold in pieces, and not as one, then it goes based on percentages, and the svara is, he doesn't explain the svara, but the svara is because ultimately you could have split it before, which means that Erech Lechem is similar to the Sma, but not exactly like the Sma. If something is sold as one, then even if it's roi lachalukah, the default is that you go 50-50. If something is not sold as one piece, it's sold as pieces, then we look at based the roi lachalukah. Beforehand, there was already, so to speak, there was some sort of chalukah between them. If I buy 10 cars, and I take with me a shutaf who gave me 30%, it's obvious that he now owns 3 of the 10 cars. You don't sell all 10 cars in one shot. If I bought a house, of dafka, because I'm with la chalukah, I sell the house as one. Now, the thing of that lechem is that if I bought 10 cars, and then I went and I sold all the 10 cars together, I bought the 10 cars not to sell to individual people, but to sell it to a company that rents out cars, or to a company that has taxis, whatever it is, then it was purchased, even though it inherently has chalukah inside of it, because you could split the 10 cars into 3 and 7. Over here, it's not so, because it was sold as one. There's a lot of questions on how to define this specific definition of shutfis when it comes what's yesh b'kedei chalukah, ein b'kedei chalukah, do you go based on the prophets or not? Then the Sivis goes, it's 2 long pages, Sifim, Ches, Tes, Yud, Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, and Biurim, tens of questions and decisions, and then then the Sivis at the end, not the end, but in Chidushim, which is the shortened version of Biurim and Sifkot and Yud Daled, then the Sivis puts forth 9 rules that apply to the whole shutfis thing. And by that he answers a bunch of questions. He solves the machlekasin. It seems like he takes the svara of the smed, that sometimes it depends according to din chalukah, sometimes it depends on hisnu, sometimes it depends on what the default hisnu is, etc. So we're just going to go through. He gives 9 points. Each one is, and the first one is essentially the definition of shutfis according to the Nesivus. He says, what is a shutfis? A shutfis essentially is a shi'bud, is a obligation. Each shutf is mishtabed to the other person to work in this business. Therefore, if something was purchased and the purpose of this, there was supposed to be a tircha from each one to make this shutfis. So even if somebody put more than somebody else, the way their shutfas is set up, that both of them have equal responsibility of tircha. Being that both have a shi'bud and equal responsibility of tircha, each one is mishtabet to the other one for 50% of the work that has to be done. Therefore, the profits are also split 50-50. It depends on the tircha. And that's why, because the tircha is equal, the profits are equal. That's the first rule that the Nesivus puts forth. Second rule the Nesivus puts forth. All this applies before they made the split, before they divided the profits. Let's say they already divided the profits 50-50, and then more profits came in somehow from this business deal. Then future profits go to Kefi Ma'aseyim, according to what they invested. Why? Because now that they already finished the first business deal, the shi'bud is already gone. There's no more shi'bud on them. And there's no more obligation for each one to be tereach for it. Therefore, the future profits are split Kefi Ma'aseyim.
Now, in other words, right now.
No, what they originally invested, because there's more profits came from the original investment. The original investment was already settled. They settled it. Somehow more profits came, whatever, something.
When you say the Fimam, you don't mean the Fimam of the original.
No, Fimam, they originally invested. If one gave 30, one gave 70, so they had all the tircha, and they sold. So now they split 50-50. But now the tircha is over. There's no more shi'bud from each one to the other. Since there's no more shi'bud from each one to the other, since it all depends on shi'bud, and there's no more shi'bud from one to another, then the profits are no longer 50-50. Because the whole reason for 50-50 is because it's totally in the shi'bud of tircha. There's no more shi'bud of tircha, there's no more 50-50. It reverts back to Kefi Ma'aseyim. Then he says, based on the same logic, if they went to shutfis together, and now each one has a shibud on each other, and then they went and they decided they're changing the shutfis. They're changing what they're going to do. And they didn't start the new business venture. Now, the old shibud is already over. The new shibud didn't start because they didn't start doing business together yet. So therefore, it's considered as if the first one was already nischalik, was already divided. And any future profits coming weiter, since there was no shibud now, so reverts again back to kefi moiseyim. But if they started already working on the second shutfis, the new shibud kicked in, then again we go to 50-50.
What did they change to? It's in the middle they decided to change.
They had a shoyr, and they decided right now they're not doing the shoyr the way they were planning on doing it. They're changing to a whole different business venture. Fourth point. If the original schayra that they purchased is still there, they didn't sell it, therefore the shibud is still in place. And then, now they have a shibud onto each other. And then they profited from the side by stealing. And they had a side business. During the day they sell cars, and during the night they rob people. And so then over there the revach is also la'emtza, also gets split 50-50. Why? Because the shibud is still in place. Since the original shibud is still in place, so therefore the profits are also in place. One person robbed more people, one person robbed less. But be'etzim, the tirch is equal. They're both, each one is supposed to rob 10 people. One robbed 5, one robbed 15. Doesn't make a difference. You have to split all the profits 50-50. You never know how much is in someone's wallet. Now, the next point that the Nesivus brings. Now, then basically Nesivus in his points of here summarizes everything that's in these Sa'ifim, the way he understands it, and he, based on the reasons. The fifth point is the Nesivus brings. If the shutfus is something which cannot be split, right? Now the Nesivus goes into what the Smeh brings. Until now, the Svara was Mitzat Shibud. Now the Nesivus goes and says, well, now we have some more details which are now dependent on Yesh Ba'ilach Leikar and Yesh B'din Chalukah and B'din Chalukah. So he says something which originally cannot be split, like a shoyr. And the shoyr was meant for shchita. And that was the purpose of the shoyr. Being that now, when the shoyr is alive, you can't split it in two, because you kill it, and you can't do anything with it, it becomes a non-kosher animal. At the end, he uses the sword of the Smeh, but fakert. At the end, the revach is going to be split 50-50, even, he follows the Smeh and that nekuda, but he adds another point, even if they already did chalukas hashutfus and split from each other. That means even though the shibud already ended, being that the yisoid of the shibud wasn't something she'ein bo kedei chalukah, therefore the revachim which come from this thing she'ein bo kedei chalukah, even though it was shechted later, since you cannot sell one part without the other, so therefore they get split 50-50.
Even though they
50. No, they bought it l'shchita and they changed it and they sold it as one. If they bought it for shchita and then they sold it for shchita, then the Nesivus is not arguing the Shulchan Aruch.
No, if they sold it, if they sold the shechted animal, we said that it goes with the,
Lefi moisav. If it's shechted, if it's bought for shchita and it's shechted, it's kefi moisav.
We said before that if they sold the shechted animal,
they sold the animal that was supposed to be shechted and they sold it alive. It means that we don't go based on the original machshav. But if the next, Mishpat Shalom is different. I'm talking about based on the Smeh. He's taking this, the Nesivus doesn't have to agree with Mishpat Shalom. If they specifically purchase something with the intention of splitting it, there's something kedei chalukah, like a shoyr that they purchased for shchita and they actually shechted it, that then the revach is kefi moiseyim, which is clear from the Shulchan Aruch. Then if now they changed it, yeah, and they sold it as one, then the revach is la'emtza, even though originally it would have been kefi moiseyem, but then the Nesivus has another point. You can't say that the guy's going to lose out because they changed the business deal. Originally he was supposed to make, that's introduction. Why would somebody change the business venture? If they originally wanted to sell it geschachten and now they're selling it alive, why would they want to change it? For whatever reason, the market changed, and the shoyer for plowing is now worth more than the stakes that could come out of it. So therefore, they made a business decision that they're going to change the destination of their shutfus, the definition of the shutfus. So originally, if they would sell it as meat, one guy would get 70, one guy would get 30. Now that they're selling it as a live animal, you would think that, he said before, it goes split 50-50. But what gets split 50-50? We don't let the guy lose out on what we originally had to do. So let's say, if it would have been sold geschachten, it would have made $1,000. If it's sold alive, sold for $1,500. So the first 1,000 gets split 70-30. Because that is what he originally would have made. Kefi moisav. The additional 500 that came as a result of switching it from chalukah to ein bo kedei chalukah, that's where they split 50-50. Now, what happens if they bought at the next point? If they bought something for a shoyer for plowing, not for shechting and not for selling. And they rent out this thing and they use it and each one gets 50% of the profits. And then they had to shecht it. Whatever, the animal was getting old, they had to shecht it, and now, because of that, some loss happened to the animal. Maybe the animal became treif or whatever, they couldn't sell it for a profit, they had to sell it to the guy, etc. Same logic that we said before, we go also over here. The original first, whatever the loss is, the percentage of the losses, get divided kefi moiseyem. Why? Because the geschachten would get, the revach would be kefi moiseyem. The revach of a geschachten is kefi moiseyem. Therefore, the hefsed that happened because of the shchita is also kefi moiseyem. That's the first thing. Now, some profits are still there, maybe. So if there are profits, that gets split 50-50. Because originally it was supposed to be the charisha for plowing. But now that it changed,
which was other profits?
Which other profits? They sold the behemoth as treif.
It's a hefsed maybe profits.
How's the hefsed? Because they bought the animal for 200 or 300.
Must push the profits, like whatever remains.
So now, no. So they bought the animal for 300. They sold the meat for 400. Yeah. So the first 300, he has to recover his hefsed or from the hefsed from before. Or if they bought it for 1,000 and they lost 200 off it, they only sold it for 800. So the hefsedim are supposed to be kefi moiseyem, not half. And then afterwards, if they sell if there's any profit left after they make the cheshbonos, then they get split 50-50. Now, the next point. If they bought something which ein bo kedei chalukah, for example, a land, karka she'ein bo kedei chalukah, it's too small for chalukah. But there's no tircha involved in it. You just wait for the price of real estate to rise and you sell it. There's no tircha. Then now the Nesivus goes back to the original svara. Ois chalukah. We're not looking at chalukah anymore. We're looking at tircha. There's no tircha. Then there's no 50-50. It goes back kefi moiseyem. Because there's no more shibud. The last point in the Nesivus says, all this is talking about when they entered the shutfis with both of them agreed to be shutfim. Not that one was a yoresh. But lo yitzur, there was like this, a father and a son were shutfim. Reuven is the father, and he had two sons, Shimon and Levi. Reuven was a shutef with Shimon, 50-50. Reuven died. His 50% now gets split between Shimon and Levi. Levi gets 25% of the net total business, and Shimon gets the extra 25, becomes 75-25. Now they're shutfim by force, not by will. So therefore, over there, it's always cholkin kefim moiseyim, because we don't say that they originally entered and they agreed that each one should be tereach. So it means, according to the Nesivis, everything basically, sometimes you use the svara of the whether it's oimid lachalukah or not, whether it's roi lachalukah or not. Sometimes we look at what the original intention was. Sometimes we look at what the shibud is. It all depends on each one what it is. Now, this idea of the Nesivis, that it all depends on that the reason why it's 50-50 is because of tirche, you could be medayek that it's written in a few words in the Erech Lechem also. Erech Lechem is very short. The Erech Lechem, because Erech Lechem throws a comment on the Shulchan Aruch, says, when it's asku kulam, b'momin stam. Why does the Shulchan Aruch have to add the word kulam? The Shulchan Aruch copies from the Rambam. Why does it have to add the word kulam? It's asku kulam. He says, because kulam have to be misasek. If one guy works and the other guy doesn't, then it's not 50-50. The 50-50 is totally in the nisasku kulam. The Erech Lechem is Mahari Castro, and he had Hagoyes in the Shulchan Aruch. But he brings that this is only according to the Rambam, which the Shulchan Aruch follows, not according to the Rif. According to the Rif, you don't need the saskus of both. But anyways, we're following what the Shulchan Aruch says. The Avnei Choshen, Sifkot, and Yud goes through, takes in the Sivis, takes them apart, agrees with some, disagrees with some. If you have a time, you should go through all these four in the Sivis, the long ones in the Biurim, and then go through the Avnei Choshen. He agrees with some of the Nekudas of the Nesivis. For example, he agrees that if you take schayra that's made to be oimedas lachalukah, but it's not nechlak bepoil, you still, but you sell it, then the schar is anyways la'emtza. He also agrees that if you bought it for shchita,
then it goes with your not misasik anymore.
If what? No, but they sold it as one, and they were misasik for it. It could have been Oimid Lachaluk originally, but Poil, it was done as one. And Siv, huh?
Once it was Oimid Lachaluk, they already the shut is bottle, no?
No, when you do the Chalukah, the shut is bottle. In Sivkot Yud Beis, the Avnei Choshen says that if you bought it for Shchita, which was supposed to be then Kefima Yisov will get the Geshachten, and then they changed their mind, they decided they're going to sell it as one, then the profit that we split 50-50 is only on what was above the profit they would have made from selling it Geshachten. Also the Nesivos. That's the two things that he agrees with, other things he disagrees with, but I'm not going to go into it now. Let's move to a separate nekuda here for a second. If they both, let's put this aside for a minute. If they both agreed that each one is going to invest 50% of the money, and they're going to get 50% of the profits, that's the condition. But one only gave part of the money. One was supposed to give 200, one was supposed to give 200. But Poil, one gave 200, one gave 100. What do we say? What's the din over here? Do we still say they get 50-50 or not? The Mata Shimon over here in the Goyes B'S Yosef Oisam Achalaf brings from the Sefer B'nei Avram that he's a suffix in it. The B'nei Avram L'Chatchila says that it makes sense to say that it goes Kefi Mois, because one guy gave, because the Tnai was they're supposed to give 200, and you didn't. So you violated the Tnai. Obviously, you're not getting 50-50. But then he says, no, you could say, so the punkt verkehrt. Milchatchila, they decided it's going to be 50-50 because they had in mind that each one is going to give 50% of the money. But then, one guy only gave 25% of the money. And the other guy gave, one guy gave 100, the other guy gave the full amount. And the other guy still agreed to go ahead with the shutfis. So now, 1 second. So therefore, it falls out of the category of Kefi Moiseyim and it goes to the category of Tircha. And since the Tircha is equal, so the 50-50 even in this, and he stays in the Tzarech Iyun. However, over here, by the way, in such a thing, you could say, which if you're going to follow the second view of the Bnei Avraham, that they still split 50-50, and he was supposed to give the other 100, and based on that they relied on him, could be that he's going to owe him the other 100 as a debt to the other person who put it in for him. It becomes a loan. If the other person put in 300, yeah, if the other person put in 300, maybe as I owe him the 100. That's not written in the Mata Shimon, I'm just telling it to you on the side. What happens if they didn't make such a condition with Chatchila? They didn't. One person put in all the money, one person put in 0. And they decided to be shutfim. They never got around to discussing how much each one is going to do. One, they said, let's become shutfim. We're buying this house. One guy was and puts the whole money down. The Oitzer Mishpat says, there's Machriya over here, he says that, even though the others disagree with him, he says that obviously he gets 50% of the profits, but obviously he also has to put up now 50% of the money. It becomes a loan on him. Now let's move to the Shulchan Aruch, back to Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch says if they took a shayla tvicha for shechting, that if they would have shechted it, each one would receive kefi ma'asav, yeah, which we discussed before. Yeah, so it's much more clear, Shulchan Aruch paskins that you go kefi ma'asav, a shayla tvicha. Comes the Taz and says, I don't understand why the Ramah forgot to bring the shita of Ri and Rosh. I disagree with it. He says the Ri and the Rosh hold that even when you buy something a shayla shchita, the schar is la'emtza. Why? Because according to the Ri and the Rosh, if you didn't make a t'nai milchatchila, the default t'nai is the default t'nai was that everything's going to be to 50-50, which fits into what Lavush says. The fact is that the Taz brings it as a tzarich iyun on the Ramah. Why he didn't mention it is mashma. The Taz holds like these shittas, not like that lokchu shayla tvicha. They took a shayla tvicha and then they shechted it. Then it goes also 50-50. The Shach pretty much clearly holds the same way. Shach Sefkat Niyot also holds like this shitta, not like the Mechaber. But the Smeh is pretty clear that he holds like the Mechaber. The Smeh that we said before. Being that this is something sheyesh v'kedei chalukah, once it's shechted, therefore the profit is split according to ma'osav, whether it's money, whether it's businesses, etc. The Aruch HaShulchan in Sif Yudalit puts in a very interesting klal in this halachas, that in every, it seems like he implies, doesn't say it very clearly, but it's pretty clear from his words, that if there's a machlokes, any time there's a machlokes, if the schar is la'emtza or cholkin kefi amois, we follow the shitta that the schar is la'emtza, whether it's a schayra which is made to be split or a schayra which is not made to be, the Aruch HaShulchan. So that goes to the Mata Shimon. Mata Shimon, I don't remember which one, which is many of them on the Sa'if and in the beginning of this Sa'if, that when it comes to all these dinim, anytime it says cholkin, not cholkin, whatever, that is machlekes in, it's all of there's no muhzuk. You know the Mata Shimon says that in tens of other places that we mentioned him in throughout the year. According to Mata Shimon, it's only if there's no muhzuk. Once there's a muhzuk, and he has the money, you can't be moitzi. So if the muhzuk is the one who has 70% and he took 70%, then you can't be moitzi from him based on that's what. When there's a machlekes,
Only if he's holding the money.
What?
Only if he's holding the money.
If he's holding the money, yeah. And what happens if the guy,
25% is holding the money.
if the 25% is holding 50% of the money, and it's a machlekes, so again muchzak.
No, but if it's in the bank account, then
Depends on whose name. If both of the names are in the account, then they're both muchzakim, both not muchzakim. But if it's on one person's name, no, he's a muchzak.
if one quickly takes away the money from the bank account.
Takes account as a tfisa. Tfisa is a whole different category. If it's a tfisa and he has a right to be taifas, and you can't be mitzi again from him, from a taifas, he becomes a muchzak. If it was tfisa kedin, he becomes a muchzak.
He doesn't know. We're not sure.
Yeah, but yeah, machlekes, he can always say kimli. So the guy who has 30% is going to be taifas and say kimli like the Aruch HaShulchan that we always follow 50%. And like the Matar Shimon that I became the muchzak. The Mechaber then continues and says, the next din of the Mechaber, that all of this applies if they used the money to buy something for the shutfis, and then profits came as a result of it. But if the monies are still sitting in be'ain, the cash is still there, the coins are still there, and then the Mechaber says like this, Pochasu oy hoisiru machmas hamatbeya, and they became less or more because of the coins themselves, shashino hamelech oy anshe hamedina, that was changed by the king or by the people of the country, then the profits or losses get split kefi hamois. What are we talking about here? This is a very short line in the Mechaber, and that's why it's important to learn the Tur before you learn the Mechaber. Because the Tur brings you all the shittas, and it goes back to Machlekes Rishonim how to understand the Gemara. You have Rashi, you have Tosfos, you have the Rameh. The Tur starts with the Rameh, and he concludes that he holds like the Rameh. What's the svar of the Rameh? What are we talking about over here? That the coin itself is be'ain, and the coin itself became worth more or less. Why? Could be that now, either because the coin itself became, the government made each coin worth more, the government took pasula coins and made them kosher again, or the value went up. But it's not because you did business with it. It's not that you invested it and the money grew. It's the money's inherent value went up not because of your work. Then each one takes kefima ois of why, the Ramah says, because if they wouldn't put the money in, it's as if right now it's in the bag, they didn't touch it, so one person has 100 coins, one person has 50 coins. So obviously, if there is more value to it, the revach, for example, if the coins now, the government decided that each dollar is worth $2, yeah, so then one person put in 100, one person put in 50, so the $150 became $300 because the government decided so. So now, if you would say mechza, so then one person would get 100, his original 100, the other person would get his original 50, and the other 150 would be split 75-75. But being that according to the Rameh, being there was no work done, and the inherent value of it went up, not because of the business. So the guy who has 100 gets 100. Why? Because his 100 are still there, and if the 100 would be in his pocket, his 100 would be worth 200. And the guy who has 50 gets 100, because if the 50 would be in his pocket, he would also become that amount. Then the Torah says no, and then we have Rashi's shitta. Rashi says no, it's not that. It's that the coins changed in value because of Masa Umatam. And there's two ways Rashi writes it. One way the Torah writes it a little bit different than Rashi. Either that they had old coins which became new, so to speak. They invested them, they put them into something, and they got back new coins, and new coins are worth more. If you look, that's... or there are new coins which then became old coins, and the old coins are worth more. Used coins were easier, where people didn't trust. Back in the day, or even today, sometimes you see a new bill, you start worrying if the guy printed it in his own house. So, but the used bill, it went through enough of a system, it's already it's already fine.
The whole nasa thing means there was exchange.
Huh?
The whole nasa thing, whenever it says nasa, means there was exchange. It doesn't mean that it was like...
It was exchanged. When? According to Rashi. According to Rashi means they worked with it, they did business with it, and throughout the time the value of these coins, changed and became more. But because they were working with it. Maybe they bought something and sold something and now the coins went up. They bought something and sold something and the coins were changed, etc. So over here, being that the original amount of coins is still the same, they invested 100 coins, 150 coins. They bought something and they sold something, and there's no original 150 coins, but there's still 150 coins in the bag. So being that the original 150 coins, being the original number of coins is still here, so the value gets split kafi ma'iseihem. Yeah, so basically there's a very big difference between Rashi and the Rameh. According to Rashi, it's basically you put in money, and the money you invested, you worked, you did something, you did business with it, and that's why the money became worth more. According to the Rameh, that's what the Tur and Shulchan Aruch paskin, it's not that the money is not that you invested and that's how, or you worked with the money and the money got better. It's that the actual coins were sitting in the bag, be'ein, and they didn't change their values. It's two shittas, the Tur paskins like them. The Bach takes and limits the Rameh even more. It's mashma the way the Bach reads into the Rameh, that into the Tur, the way the Tur brings the Rameh, and that's how basically paskins, like the Tur, that it's only because of Gzeiras HaMelech. That means not that the coin by itself went, not that let's say you have a gold coin and the value of gold went up, and the gold was sitting in the bag. No. It's Gzeiras HaMelech, that's something which is completely unconnected to you and unconnected to your business. You didn't do anything for it. And it's a Gzeira from the king to change it higher or lower. That's when we say Kafi Ma'iseihem. But anything else, it's part of the business and it gets split 50-50. And you have the Prisha. The Prisha explains that the machlekes he explains what essentially the machlekes in Amen, the Tur is, whether the side of the machlekes is whether the coins, do you say Kafi Ma'iseihem only when the coins got better because of your work? No, sorry, when the coins got better not because of your work. That's the Rameh. That means the Shutfim didn't do anything to make this worth more. Or, according to Rashi, even if the Shutfim, if the Shutfim did something to make it better, that is why they get Kafi Ma'iseihem, because the coins are still, the same amount is still in existence. The Smeh and Sifkot and Tezayin seems like he paskins like the Rameh quite clearly, and the Smeh, why the Shulchan Aruch paskins like the Rameh, the Smeh seems like he also paskins like the Rameh, being that that the coins are be'ein, and if the coins would have remained in their pockets, they would have made that profit. So therefore, they split it. And it's mashma from the Rameh, and mashma from the way the Smeh explains it, that basically the Smeh takes the shit of the Rameh, and this is based on what he writes himself in the Prisha. It's mashma from the Smeh, it's mashma of the Svara that Lo Yitzur, they would go, and the coins are no longer be'ein, according to the Rameh. From that moment and on, all the Revachim are split 50-50, even if the value of the coins went up. And the same thing is mashma also from the Nesivis, because the Shibud begins at that moment, but not that's how they pass. The Mishpat Shalom over here brings the Beis Ephraim, the Shuvas Beis Ephraim, that he's Machriya, that his Beis Ephraim holds, that we paskin that any kind of revach, that any kind of profit that was generated in the actual coins, in the actual currency, gets split kafi ma'is. Yeah, we're soon going to see what what's enough kamina regarding such a thing. If you live in a country where there's different currency, and they invested in dollars, and the value of dollars went up, or where the value of dollars went down, and that's where it is their profits, is their losses, then in such a scenario, it would all depend on which shitta you're going to look at. If they didn't invest, and the dollars are just sitting in a bag, and they didn't get to invest it, and now each dollar is worth more, so according to the Ramed, that's when you get the value. That's when this profit is split k'fi ma'asav. According to Rashi, no, it's because it's not so. You'll figure it out based on each situation, and you could also go in whoever learned the Chesribis, if different coins are they considered Alter Rebbe as a whole discussion, gold coins versus silver coins, if it's considered Peiris or considered mois. Chav Nesiva says that we compare mois to Peiris, but and the Sir from Shulchan Aruch, it's clear that we compare mois to Peiris. But when it comes to if our golden coins considered something or not, and that's also part of this. I'm not going to get into it now. The Ramah continues and adds on the Mechaber and says the same thing applies based on the Mechaber Paskin like the Rameh. The same thing applies to Peiros, to fruits. We'll soon see exactly what that means. If they became Shutfim and Peiros, and the Peiros are Be'ain, like the Rameh, and then the Peiros went up in value, then they split Lefi Mois according to their original investment. The Smeh L'Shitasai, why are you split Lefi Mois and Sifkot and Yud Zayin? Basically the fruits went up in value. Yeah, we discussed yesterday strawberries. The strawberries went up from $1.99 to $7.99 a box. And since Meikara, they're made to be sold separately, yeah, not in a truckload of strawberries, but in packages. And each one, so therefore, Chokim Lefi Hamois. The Shach says, that's not what we're talking about over here. We're not talking about that they invested money and bought strawberries. Talking about two people, each one has a strawberry field. One guy went and packed 30 boxes. One guy went and packed 70 boxes. And they all put it together into one warehouse. They became Shutfim. And now the value of strawberries went up. So the original peiros that each one brought in are what went up in value. So since if I would have had the 70 boxes of strawberries by me, I would have made more money, the value of the strawberries went up, so too if I have so too over here. But it's mashma from it that if they purchase fruits with the money, it's already the beginning of an investment, and at that point the revachim are split 50-50.
You would argue in the case where you invested in fruits?
Yeah, so the Shach says there's machlekes rishonim over there. Shach says the machlekes rishonim, if they purchase fruits and then the fruits went up in value, do we say k'fi moiseyim or not? He says what the Shulchan Aruch, what the Ramah says clearly, k'fi moiseyim is talking, when there's no machlekes, is talking about when the actual fruits are each one brought in, and that is still be'ain. I want to conclude this point in this discussion about the fruits. Interesting thing the Mishpat Shalom brings at the end of this Sa'if, that if you had Shutfim, that they became Shutfim to buy certain Tavua, certain grains from the potters. And they decided they're going to split the profit, the extra, whether they're going to sell, whether they're going to get more grains, whatever it is, they're going to split it 50-50. And they were expecting to receive 200 pounds or 20 pounds of extra grains. And first 10 pounds of extra came. And Reuven tells Shimon, take the 10, I'll take the next 10. I don't need the flour, I don't need the grains in my house. And a part says every part, changed his mind. And now it was only 10. There's no more 10. The other 10 are not there anymore. They're never going to get them. Comes Shimon and says, we agreed we're going to split the profit 50-50. You took 10 because I told you take those 10 and intention I'm going to get the other 10. Give me 5. Because we're supposed to split 50-50. So the Mishpat Shalom says there's two opposite ways of looking at it. First svara you could say is, he's supposed to get 50-50. Why? He's supposed to get 5 back. What's the first svara? Because it's as if the chalukah never happened. As if the shutfus was never finalized. they became a problem in this shutfus. There was a chalukah which was done betos, which we know from before. The chalukah that was done betos, which we learned in Kufain Hey, or before that, Kufain Dal, whatever it is, then the chalukah gets reverted. So over here, the chalukah was done betos, the chalukah gets reverted, each one gets half. Or, say the total opposite. The chalukah happened. The stachfus, your mazel got messed up. You agree that I'm getting, the chalukah already happened. My 50%, you agree that I should take. No, he says, I will take the next one. Not because I'm going to get the next one. You take your money now, and I'll take my money soon. The Maisa, the Mishpat Shalom is machri over here, that in the hefsid, what they lose, if they lose out anything, or they have to split kefi moisayim. Over here it doesn't go anymore to 50-50. So if the mois were 70-30, that's how it's going to be split. In the loss that was there. The Mechaber concludes the Sif with a general rule. If they made a Tanai between them, everything's kefi Tanam. Everything's according to the Tanai that they made between them, whether it's the Revach, whether it's the Hefsid. And obviously what it refers to, Hakol kefi Tanam, means during the time that they had the shutfus, if they decided it's going to be for years, during this year, if it's the tanoim that they had in the shutfus, they agree that they're going to do this, they're going to do that, whichever way, as long as, so it's, hakol kefi tanam means that the split is according to what they agree, but also kefi tanam simply means as long as they follow everything that's supposed to be followed. So if it's within the amount of time that they decided mechatchila, then it's within the amount of time. If it's within the conditions, then it's within the conditions. But now, if the time is over, time is up of the shutfus, they agreed that even though one person puts 30, one person puts 70, they're going to split 50-50. That's what they agreed. Or they agreed, forget. One person puts in 20%, one person puts in 80%, and they agreed it's going to be 60-40, not 80-20. For whatever reason, they agreed like that. For 3 years. 3 years are up. Or the Tanoim, the conditions that they made for the shutfus were changed. They agreed that they're going to do, this guy's going to do this guy's going to do that, and didn't happen. So then we revert back to the whole beginning of the Sif. Some things go 50-50, some things go kefim ha'isayim, v'chol v'chol. We don't follow the Tnoi HaShutfus. The Aruch HaShulchan in Sif Kotan Tezvav throws in a thing, he says, if they finished one shutfus, and they agreed, I'm putting into real estate, I'm putting in 20%, you're putting in 80%. You're not going to have to deal with the headaches. I'm going to be the one managing it, and therefore I'm going to take 40%, you're going to take 60% of the profits. And they finished, they bought a building, they did it, everything is done, they sold it, one guy got 40% of the profits, one guy got 60% of the profits, comes back, now it's a new deal, comes and says, hey, we did a good job last time, let's go and do another deal. And they don't go into all discussions about Tanaim. They just said, we had a deal, let's do it again. There's another building for sale. And let's do this. And they don't say, let's do the same thing as before. The Aruch HaShulchan says that in such a scenario, we say that the next shutfus has the same exact name as the previous shutfus. That means one guy's going to put 20, one guy's going to put 80. The guy who puts 80 can't come later and say, no. The first building was 60-40 because it was the first one. This one, no, 70-30. Can't do that. You have to specify that you're changing the tnoim of the shutfus.
This is what the person says because it was good.
No, it doesn't say anything. It just says we're going next deal.
A year from now, next deal also.
The deals continue. He says you're making a new deal with the same person. You're putting in the same percentages of money. You're both are continuing similar scenarios. That's what Choshen says. The Chikrei Lev over here adds another point which is relevant over here. There's a machlokes between them what the Tanoim were originally. So then whatever they agreed between each other is good. That's what they get. And whatever they're arguing about, yachloiku. But obviously the Mata Shimon still kicks in over here that the Rashi doesn't write it over here. I'm just telling you it's if for yachloiku only because one guy's not a muhzak. Neither of them are muhzakim. If they're muhzakim, there's no yachloiku. There's no mitzvah himself. Sif Vav, the Mechaber continues. Sif Vav, the Mechaber says it's all regarding the money that they put in, but regarding money that is lost completely, A person doesn't have to bring in money from outside the shutfus, from his pocket, to cover losses. So if one person put in 100, the other person put in 200, and everything, the whole investment went sour, so the one who gave 100, and obviously they would have done 50-50, the one who gave 100 doesn't have to go home and bring 50 to even out the losses, because the other guy lost 200 and he lost 100. So from the 100 remaining, it should have been that each one should lose 150, not 200, right? 200, 100, because it's l'revach l'hefsed. So Mechaber says, no, you don't have to bring from your house. And the Shach explains, why is that? He says, very simple. When the Shach Sefkat Mid Beis, he says, what's the sweat of the Mechaber? When do you say that, when do people go into Shutfus Bein the Schar Bein Lehefsed get split 50-50? Is when you buy something, and then you sell it, and you sold it at a loss, so then you say that I should share the losses with you, 50-50. Not when the whole investment goes sour. And in Sifkat Yud Gimel, the Shach brings the svara of the Bach. Seems like he holds like the Bach. And the Bach is Machriya of the Machlekes Rishonim, that that only when the hefsid, that if the hefsid was not as a result of the regular course of business, that's when you don't pay Mishalem Beisi. But if the loss is because of the Masamatan, because of the Shutfas, because of the business, and the other Shutaf knew that that's what they're going to do, then yeah, he is Mishalem Beisi. Because that's part of the thing. They agreed that I'm going to put in 200, you're going to put in 100, we're going to be 50-50, for good or for bad. And then we did a certain business investment, and we both discussed it, and we both agreed on this business investment, and the business investment was a total loss. Then this is part of the business, part of the shutfus. You are responsible to shalem mibeisei the 50%. The Erech Shai says that the Shach didn't understand the Bach, and what the better explanation of the Bach is that he says it's not, because from the Shach it's mashma that you have to have a total loss that's not because of Masu Matan to be able to claim that you're not Mashalem Beisi. The Erech Shai brings in the going sweets, not to say Pashut. Even if it's not a total loss, but it's a loss not because of Masu Matan, you're still not Mashalem Beisi. Let's say the thing burnt down. You're still not Mashalem Beisi. The Erech Shai continues, says another thing, that if they made an agreement milchatchila, that it's going to be that they're both shutfim and they're both taking responsibility for half of the revachim and half of the efsedim, then the kuli alma you have to pay mebeisa if the original tanai was such. And he says that's from the mabit, and the mabit is quoted. The Shach tells you to look in the mabit, so obviously the Shach holds like that. Elamai, he adds that it only applies for schar and for hefsid, but not for oinsin. If a person says, I'm becoming a shooter of schar and hefsid, but and I'm taking a chayes for schar and hefsid, and that's the t'nai, then the t'nai is kayam. But if for oinsin, for oinus, you have to have a specific t'nai to be mashalem beisa. You have to write schar, hefsid, and oinus. The Pischei Tshuva in Sifkot and Ches brings this deus of the Bach, and the people who hold like the Bach, that if the hefsid is a result of the regular business forms, then you're Mashalem Mibeisa. And the Pischei Tshuva says, can't paskin like that. We're not Moitzi Momen Mibeisa. Why? He concludes the end of that long Pischei Tshuva Sifkot and Ches. Says because the Prishan and the Behuda and the Taz all disagree with the Yesod of this din. And they hold that even a hefsid, because of regular course of business, you're not Mashalem Mibeisa, and therefore he says you can't say that you could be Mashalem Mibeisa. Now the Taz has a question over here on the whole Yesod of this Mechaber. He says in Siman Tzaddik Gimel, we see the Mechaber paskins clearly that a Shutaf is Mashalem Mibeisa and Efsedim. The only thing is over there he says that you're not Naman B'Shua. Taz doesn't give an answer for it. It seems like he questions this whole thing. Questions it. He says he has a kasha on the mechaber. The Erech HaShulchan in Ois Beis, Ois Gimel, says there's no kasha from the Tzadik Gimel to here. Siman Tzadik Gimel, there's Mishalem Beis, he's talking about the Meir T'nai Meikara. Also on the Hafsedim. Over here we're talking about there was no T'nai. And then the Erech HaShulchan says, and if you look in the Knesset Agdeilah is mashma that even if you do make a T'nai, you still not Mashalem Beisai. And I think there's from Shlomo Kluger also that it says that even there is a T'nai to be Mashalem Beisai, you're still not Mashalem Beisai because anyways a Asmachta, nobody takes upon himself to be responsible to put more money into it. And the Erech HaShulchan also pretty much explains that Be'etzem Medina, you're responsible, Api Din, you would have been responsible to pay, you are responsible for the Hafsedim. But to be able to force you to pay from your own pocket extra, for that you need a T'nai. But so that's why inside the Gimel, the Mechaber writes clearly. Over here, there's no T'nai, the Mechaber says not Mashalem Beisai, but Be'etzem, you're supposed to be Mashalem Beisai. That's how the Erech HaShulchan explains it. The Pamoin Zov says, everybody has an issue with Siman Tzadik Gimel, steer it to here, steer it to there. We paskin like the Yavetz, that you have to write in the Shtar, the Nusach of the Lashon is Keshehem Berevach Kach Lehefsed, and that implies that you're mishtabed to the Hafsedim also, and you're Mashalem Beisai. The Avnei Choshen adds a point over here, that even according to the Mechaber, it's not Mashalem Beisai, that's only to the other Shutef. But if the Shutfis borrowed money from other people, then yeah, each person has to be Mashalem Beisai to the other people. That yeah. The Shutfis has to be Mashalem Beisai to the other people. But to other shutef, you don't have to be Mashalem, you don't have to be Mashalem Beisai. By the way, the Erech Shai that I mentioned, the Erech Shai brings the Gra, and he understands his Medayik from the Gra, that similar to what the Knesset Agdeilah is mashma, similar to what Shlomo Kluger, that even when you make a T'nai to pay mi Beisai by Hafsedim, you still don't pay mi Beisai. The Mishpat Shalom brings another interesting thing about Mashalem mi Beisai, that if they went an investment which didn't require any original money to lay out. They both went to go work by the king. And they got a certain, the king has wood or trees, whatever, and they chop it down, they work, they sell, they get profits, and they're 50-50. And then a certain hefsed happened from that thing. Then, l'kuli alma Mashalem mi Beisai. Why? Because the original shutfis was based on that we're going into this from our own. We're not putting in our own money. We're going to make money off it. But it was with understanding what does hefsed mean. Since I'm not putting in my own money, so what does hefsed mean? Where's the hefsed coming from? Achrayas lahefsed. Achrayas lahefsed obviously means mi Beisai. So over there, the kuli alma will be, even according to those that hold it, you're not Mashalem mi Beisai. Over here, hold you do Mashalem mi Beisai, because it's a clear umdine that they enter the shutfis on that. That's what the Mishpat Shalom paskas. I want to finish with the Matashimur in Agos HaTorah Islamet. It brings the name of the Sefer Sam Chaim, that all this is talking about when there's a loss, an actual loss. What happens if there's no loss? There's chayvus, the shutfis lent money, and now the person who was supposed to pay it back didn't pay it back. And he says then one of the shutfim is responsible to lay out money to the other person al smach that they're going to be goyva the chayv later. Which I don't, he says that the ikuv, a delay in collecting is not equal to a hefsed. And a delay in collecting, you are Mashalem mi Beisai, Mashayin in a hefsed, you're not Mashalem mi Beisai. According to those that hold it, the hefsed is not Mashalem mi Beisai. But I don't know exactly in what scenario that would be. Now, I did mention about borrowing money, that the shutfis borrows money from people, they have to pay it back afterwards. There's no time now, but we're going to have to go into a whole different share about it, about the way businesses are structured today, all the poskim, corporations, and everything else, which changes the whole the whole outlook on these things. And on Sunday I'll try to give a share on that.